Okay, we're in Sim Pedalet, the Ramah of Halacha Vav. We're going to do research on the first part of the Ramah. The Ramah says, Tolam Hagadelim Bechmei Pitchers, bugs that grow in different kinds of mushrooms. Din Kumai B'Shar Paris, they have the same din as if bugs that grow in any other Paris, which is to say they're considered attached, if they grew while they were attached to the ground, they're considered to have grown on the ground, which has those chumras to it. We wouldn't say that they're not considered attached to the ground. Since the bracha is shahakal on a mushroom, so you would think they're not considered attached to the ground. Kamash Moran, that no, they are considered attached to the ground. As far as our halachas, a bug that grew on a mushroom that was while it was growing, that's considered attached to the ground. I mean, of course, if it's not growing anymore, if it's in a package, it's off the ground. But while it's growing, it's considered attached to the ground. Okay, that's the part where the Ramah we're going to see now. The end of the Ramah is for a different time. Okay, where is the Ramah coming from? The Gemara Bracha says that the bracha on mushrooms is shahakol because mimki lo yanki, they don't draw the nutrition directly from the ground, and so they grow in the air. They grow in the air, and because of that, the Hagoyis is a beheter, which is appears in the back of the Sefer is a beheter. The Hagoyis is a beheter says that therefore bugs that grow in a mushroom are considered to have not grown on the ground. So the Gemara says they're not considered, they're not yearning from the ground. So he says the bugs that grow in mushrooms grew off the ground, and they're mutter until they perish from the mushroom. Okay, and Teres Chatas argues on that. He brings two rayas against it. He says, first of all, the exact same Gemara says, even though the minki lo yanki, the mirbu robu mi'ara, they do grow from the ground in some way. Okay, and since they grow from the ground, in some ways they do grow from the ground, some ways they don't. So the Ramah's words is, the document's words is ktsas gedula karka. They're somewhat considered attached to the ground. That's one thing. His second right is that the Gemara in the Durham says hanoidim b'gedula karka, also b'chmei pitris. If a person says he's not going to eat gedula karka, he's not going to eat these mushrooms also. So you see that it's considered, to some extent, it's considered gedula karka. Okay. What? Okay. So fine. That's the second right that he brings. That's what the Ramah argues. Now I have to tell you something. I don't really know why the Ramah says the Teres Chatas says go look in the Durham because that exact same it's a copy. The same Gemara is in brachas. He says the first thing is in brachas and the other one is in the Durham. They're really both in brachas and in the Durham. I'm not sure why in the middle he switched from brachas and Durham. The Gemara is word for word. The two Gemaras are word for word. I don't get it.
Is it a Mishnah in the Durham or it's a Gemara?
No. Same Gemara. In the brachas. I'm not sure why I said this is the brachas, this is in the Durham. Okay. Anyhow, also it's worthwhile to say the Gemara says the Gemara that the Teres Chatas brings says Hanoidim b'gedulei karka can't eat kamei pitches. But the person is noidim miperis haaretz, then he can't eat kamei pitches. So it's again we're seeing the same thing, which is that it's in between. It's partially gedulei karka, partially ground and partially not ground. And the Hagoyis Isveter is going to learn. He's going to learn that it's not enough gedulei karka. It's both. The same Gemara says hanoidim b'gedulei karka and hanoidim miperis haaretz. Okay, so it's for some things it is from the ground, something that's not. So that's what the Machlokes is, and our Ramah is telling us that the din is considered attached to it.
Okay. The Paris is different than, is more specific than the vegetables and the rest of the bracha.
You're saying so over there the reason.
It says that just because it's you can eat if someone says I'm noted from Paris, you can still eat mushroom. A mushroom doesn't mean it's not considered gedulei karka.
Paris means the produce of the ground. The produce of the ground. So why isn't this produce of the ground? I don't think. No. That's not what it means. It means lafuke mushrooms. It doesn't mean lafuke cucumbers. Okay. So that's the Halachos. So now
the Paris don't want to include trees also, right? Citrus, oranges and everything.
Yes. Okay. The Minchas Yaakov is mesupik now about something like that. On this, the Minchas Yaakov appears on Teres Chatas. The Minchas Yaakov is mesupik now about the following. He says, if you look at Rashi and that Gemara in Brachas, the Gemara Brachas that the document brought, Rashi in Brachas says, when he talks about these kamei pitris, he says, and therefore they're attached to the ground, even if they grow in kalim. I mean, even if they didn't grow on the ground like a mushroom growing in your backyard, they grew in a pot, in an Atzis she'ein Nakuv, it's also considered to be attached to the ground because they're attached to a pot.
Right, please call one.
They're attached to a pot full of soil, so that's considered attached to the ground. On the other hand, he brings diukim from the way the Teres Chatas himself says. The Teres Chatas himself says that all of this proves that they could do like karka. And he understands that to mean is that the Ramah is saying is they have to be growing in the physical ground, like in your backyard. But if there are mushrooms growing in the ground, that's considered to be attached to the ground. Were the mushroom to be growing in an Atzis Shein Nakuv, it would not be considered attached to the ground. Okay? Maybe I lost you in the rayas. But the idea is the Mechas Yaakov is misupik. What happens if this mushroom grew in an Atzis Shein Nakuv? Okay? No, not different. It's not different. Any other different than that. No, the child is would a vegetable, or a thing that grew in Atzis Shein Nakuv, is that considered that the bug grew attached to the ground or not attached to the ground? He's focusing on mushroom. That's the case that he's right up to with mushroom. Yes, correct. I'm going to tell you why he's saying mushroom.
Greenhouse.
Right, we're coming to that. So he brings the Mechas Yaakov brings different diyukim as to whether a bug that grew in Atzis Shein Nakuv is or is not considered attached to the ground. He's misupik about that. Rayas from within our cases here, and he's misupik about it.
And isn't Atzis Shein Nakuv always considered Nakuv Karka, not Mechubal Karka?
It's usually not considered Mechubal Karka, but the rice is not considered attached to the ground. He wants it, but maybe for this you don't need it to be attached to the...
We're talking about the rices here, bugs.
No, but we're talking about... Right, so for dinim deraisa, for dinim deraisa, Atzis Shein Nakuv is considered not attached to the ground. Midrabanan it usually is attached for many things it is, but the rice it's not. So if we were looking at it, we'd say, well, so midoraisa, we would say this is not attached to the ground. Maybe midrabanan, but we'd say midoraisa it's not attached to the ground. But the question is over here, does it have to be part of the, like he said, the aretz? Does it have to be in the ground itself, for which Atzis Shein Nakuv is not? Or does it have to just be something that's growing out of the karka?
What? It's like a mushroom.
Like a mushroom?
It's not growing out of karka. It's growing out of a little pot of dirt. Have a little pot of dirt.
Okay, so...
We're going to say that's Shaitan Oretz. It's not Oretz. I don't forget. It's mutter. Yeah. I don't understand it.
Okay, so
even though it's not going to be it's mutter.
Yeah. So Shlomo Kluger says, like Yossi does, Shlomo Kluger says, he said, it's pashut that's not attached to the ground. He's
don't forget it. He doesn't want to say it's mutter.
Right. He says, pashut that's not attached to the ground.
And therefore what?
It's mutter. The bugs that grow in there are mutter. Are considered that they grew off the ground. They grew off the ground.
In terms of Gidul. Attached.
He's talking as far as bug. We're not sure if it grew again. If a bug grows attached to the ground on the fruit, even if it moves in that fruit, it's also. But for this, or even if it didn't move, maybe it's also. But for this, he wants to say it's off the ground. It has to leave where it came from. Okay, so Shlomo Kluger says that he's not talking about mushrooms. Shlomo Kluger is talking about something else. He says it's partial that it's not considered attached to the ground. He says it's grown up in a pot of dirt. Actually, but the opposite side is the Aruch Mishur. The Aruch Mishur is a pirush on the documentation. Okay, the Aruch Mishur. It's in the new Torah. The Aruch Mishur says he thinks that the Mechas Yaakov is not correct, and he thinks that it's partially the opposite. That of course it isn't attached to the ground. Okay, he said, and if you look, he doesn't mean this right, but if you look at the documentation, the words of the documentation is like this. He says, when he finishes arguing on Hagoy's Isaveta, he says, the Chibura Talya Milsa V'loy B'Gidul Min Haaretz. Okay, so the documentation says the rule of what you need to be considered Sheretz Ala Haaretz is if it's Mechubar. Okay, so that sure sounds like the Aruch Mishur is learning it. That doesn't depend if it's Gedula Min Haaretz, but it has to be Mechubar, which is an extension. That's what the mushrooms are. The mushrooms are not growing from the ground, but they're attached to the ground, and that's how he's learning. But that's at Memela, the Aruch Mishur is the other way around. That it's for sure is attached to the ground. Okay, so as David here said. These people are all talking about mushrooms. Many of them are talking about mushrooms, but it has nothing to do with mushrooms. We'll see why in a second why they're talking about that. So, and I'll mention to you before we end this part that Ravaya in his Sefer he brings down that he asked Shlomo Zalman and Vosner what they thought about bugs that grew in Atzis Shein Nakuv. Both of them said to him, "We don't know, and you have to bring us a raya." That's what they said to him. Both of them said that to him. We now see that it's Machlokes HaPoskim. It's Machlokes HaPoskim whether a bug that grew in Atzis Shein Nakuv is or is not. And Ravaya, in later things that he wrote, not in his regular sefer, in later things that he writes, brings some of these marmakamas. Okay, he brings some of these marmakamas. Some of them are in the Darkei Tshuva, but he brings those in whether Atzis Shein Nakuv. Okay, and
something grows on an inanimate object. It's Mechubal Karka on a building.
That's Mechubal.
So what's the deal with that?
That's because the glue attached to the ground. That is attached to the ground.
It is attached to the
ground. But the flower pot is not attached. The flower pot is going on the...
I understand, but the Aruch Mishur is Chazal Mechas Yaakov because all he needs is Mechubar. Nobody's disagreeing with that.
No, but when the documentary explains why mushrooms are issur, why mushrooms are considered attached to the ground, they think because all you need to do is to be attached. You're saying he needs attached means but attached to the bike.
Yeah, right. Nobody disagrees.
Okay, fine. Okay, I hear that. Okay. And I'm going to end off by telling you, I'm ending with this part by telling you, you should just know that there's a machlokes in Tosfos, which is a machlokes in Ramah, which is a machlokes in the Halacha. What it means, it's all the same machlokes. What it means to be an Atzis and Nakuv. We're using that term an Atzis and Nakuv. It's a pot that has no hole in it. Okay, it's a machlokes. What kind of things need holes? What kind of pots need holes and don't need holes? Some pots that look like they have no holes in it, really the unique goes straight through it. The unique goes through it. Depending, it's a machlokes. What it is, and we're not talking about that. Okay, there's machlokes, but for our purposes, we're going to pretend that every pot is an Atzis and Nakuv. It's in Gittin. Okay, the beginning bit. Okay, now. The reason why everybody's talking about mushrooms, many people are talking about mushrooms, is because mushrooms grow very differently than every other fruit and vegetable. Okay, mushrooms, I'm not talking about the mushrooms that are in your backyard. I'm talking about mushrooms, the way you grow mushrooms, if we can use the word commercially, cultivated, is not like any other fruit. Mushrooms don't grow, most things grow in this beautiful, sunny, land outside. And mushrooms grow in dark, moist, places that you wouldn't want to be, that's where they want to go. Okay? They're not a regular plant, it's a fungus, and it grows in these unusual places. Mamela, it lends itself to being an Atzis and Nakuv. It's more likely that you're going to grow mushrooms in Atzis and Nakuv than you're going to grow tomatoes in Atzis and Nakuv. Okay? And in fact, if you would know a little bit about how to grow mushrooms nowadays, you would think it's very negated to mushrooms. And that is, how do you grow mushrooms? How do they grow mushrooms commercially nowadays? What they do is they have these huge factories. They're big buildings with no windows in them. Okay, big closed-up buildings.
Casino.
What do you say?
It's a casino in there.
It's a casino. And in these buildings they have these beds. Okay, which there's like poles supporting a bed of manure. Okay, and into the manure they put they inoculate it with fungus, with the fungus that they want to grow into there, and it grows. And usually at the top of the manure there's a little dirt on there. There's a little dirt in there also. And after it grows for however long, they have this little like tractor that goes along, and they harvest it, they collect it, and they start again. So
how long is the process?
I don't remember how long it takes. So the beds are just at a Nakuv. The things are there's big holes on the bottom of it. But even though the bed has holes in it, the building's got a cement floor to it. Okay, so it's for our purposes, it's an Atzis and Nakuv. Okay, the bed itself, if you would look at it, you would say, well, there are holes in it. There's loads of holes in it. But
why do you need the holes in it?
Why does it have the holes in it? I don't know.
Drain out.
Maybe I don't know what the reason is. But it's or maybe it just doesn't need a lot, so they just put the bare minimum. I don't know. But the floors they have a cement floor. So you would say is let's think ahead. We have a machlokes in the poskim. Machlokes from way back when, way back when, machlokes are poskim whether bugs in Atzis and Nakuv are mutter or issur. So you could see someone saying it's like this. If I have a mushroom that may have bugs in it, I'm not talking about a mushroom that does have bugs in it. A mushroom that has a miyad hamatzah, that's only issur midrabanan to eat it without checking it. So maybe you would say it's an issur, it's a shiloh midrabanan. So machlokes are poskim whether it's mutter. So Safek midrabanan the gula. So maybe you'll say the bugs and mushrooms are going to be mutter. It grows in Atzis and Nakuv. Commercially grown mushrooms are. The building makes it an Atzis and Nakuv. It's a Safek midrabanan. Because to eat if you knew there was a bug in there, it's a shiloh d'oraisa. If you have a bug that has only a how much of being infested, it's only the rabbanon. So it's only the rabbanon. So you could say,
right?
why do you think
Safek if there's a bug? Even if there is
you
a
could
bug,
say it that way. You could say it that way. Or you could call it Safek midrabanan. Same thing. Same thing is so you could think that therefore it would be mutter. Okay. However, that's only true if you know a little bit about how to make mushrooms. Okay. If you know a little bit more, then you realize that's not true. Okay. That's not true. And the reason is because there are really two ways to grow mushrooms. Okay. One way is the way I described it to you. Okay? And that's the professional way to grow mushrooms. And I spoke to someone who knows a lot about mushrooms from visiting mushroom plants in Pennsylvania. And if you go to Pennsylvania, which it seems is like the capital of mushroom growing, if you go to Pennsylvania, that's what you're going to see. Okay? But the people who grow it in this kind of a way, also, the people who grow it like this are also very sophisticated. They inoculate, they sterilize all their manure. They use loads of things to control pests. And their mushrooms don't have bugs in them. These people are very sophisticated, and even though they're using manure, which sounds like they're very unsophisticated, they're really very advanced, and they don't have bugs in their mushrooms. So for those people who were trying to be makel, they're not the ones who have the bugs in them. The other way of growing mushrooms
Is it all type of mushrooms or specific mushrooms?
I don't know if all,
Button mushrooms, are they
I believe that they all go like that. Okay? They go
China, all these things.
But in the other way to grow mushrooms is a much more backwards way. The same theoretical same way. They have beds with manure in it that are growing, that the things are growing and blah 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 blah. But in the less sophisticated countries where they're growing these things, where they're growing lots of them, these beds are not in cement buildings. They're in someone's backyard. They're laying on the floor. They're laying in a little hut. They're laying in something without a floor to it. The same people, and those people don't pay any special attention to their growing conditions and to the bugs, v'chahena. So the people with the bugs, the mushrooms that have the bugs in it, means for those types of growings that have the bugs in them, are not an Atzis Nakuv. Okay, those things, I told you, the bed itself has got loads of holes in it. It only makes it Atzis Nakuv because it's growing in a sophisticated factory, with a cement floor to it. Well, those people don't have that. So the people who have the Atzis Nakuv don't have the bugs. People who have the bugs don't have the Atzis Nakuv. So Mamela, it's not helping us. Okay?
Well, it is. I mean, if you know the origin of where it's coming from.
If you know where it's coming from, if it's coming from Atzis Nakuv, chances are it doesn't have bugs in it anyhow. If it's coming from a place that has the bugs in it, chances are it's not going to have bugs in it. So in those places, it could be a meat hamatzui. In those,
And then it's still something that I've Safek came from Pennsylvania.
So that's easy enough. Pick up the package. What does it say? Product of this or product of this? You can see where it comes from. You'll know what the. So
that's a can.
So it comes out potentially. What we're saying here is a potential heter. The potential, if under the right conditions, if we had only a miyad hamatzui and it was Atzis Nakuv, it would be a heter, and mushroom would be a good example. But exactly what the place we're talking about would be potentially a good example, except it doesn't exactly work out. It didn't work out the way we wanted to. But anyhow, from that's theoretical. But now we're going to move on to two other cases. One which is a little bit it'll make you feel better, a little bit it'll be good for us, and the other one is more lemais. It's not really lemais, but it's more lemais. And that is like this. There's two ways. I'm going to break things up into two ways to grow vegetables in the greenhouse. Okay, I'm roughly making it into two ways. One is you take a field. You've seen this as you drive along the road. You see someone has a field, and instead of growing his produce out in the field like the way you're supposed to, he builds over his field. He builds a greenhouse. Okay, which protects it. He can adjust the climate. He can do what he wants to. So he's taking basically a plain old field, and he put up a big glass box around it. And in that box, he controls the climate and makes it grow just the way he wants. Okay? That's not what we're talking about. What I'm talking about is what you would call as hydroponics, okay, which is to say, it's not that they built a glass box over a field. They built a factory. Okay, they put down a cement floor in the middle of some city, okay, right here in the middle of Chicago. Someone puts down a cement floor, builds on top of that glass box. Okay, he builds a way to protect it from the elements, and he grows the produce not in the ground. It doesn't grow in dirt the way we're used to. It grows in water. That's why it's called hydroponics. It grows in water. Sometimes the whole thing is grown in water, or usually it's just the later stages are grown in water. Okay, this technology, a lot of this was developed in Eretz Yisrael, where they had to grow things in land that was not suitable for growing. So they learned they developed a lot of this technology to grow things in with minimal amount, and they grow it in water. The point here is that they're giving it exactly the nutrients it needs and not wasting it and not growing it in dirt. Okay? So these things that grow in hydroponics would appear to be, I can't say for sure, but appear to be an Atzis Nakuv. Okay, it's growing, again, I told you, it's not growing...
The shallow of a bracha to be Atzis or mitzvahs.
Yes, but we're learning about time. So it's not...
It's not telling you the same thing? If you don't make a lot of dhamma, then it's not telling.
It's related. Okay, it's not exactly. It's related. If it grew out in a greenhouse that's over a farm, it's not Atzis Nakuv, it's growing in the dirt. The greenhouse is just a protection. But in this kind of a greenhouse, it's growing inside of a building. Okay, it's growing in a building, in a metal container, and all kinds of things that has this greenhouse covering to it. So those would seem to be Atzis Nakuv. So that means it's like this: if we have a bug in one of those vegetables, now that bug, well, we don't know what the bug is. That bug is a Safek. If the bug is in let's say a head of lettuce, if the bug is in the head that it was born in, it'll be mutter.
Right.
It grew in an Atzis Nakuv. Okay, miyad hamatzui. I don't mean if you saw it. I mean if you just Kashrus it. It's a miyad hamatzui. It grew in an Atzis Nakuv. If it's in the original head that it grew in, it'll be mutter. It was not pierced from makom revise. If it went to the next head, then it's going to be issur. If it went from one head to the other, it would be issur, because even if it grew off the ground, it went from one head to the other, it moved from its revise to the next place, it would be issur. So what would happen is, if you picked up a head of lettuce, it's a Safek. The bug that's in there, I don't know if the bug is from grew in here, in which case it would be mutter, or if the bug grew in the next head, in which case it would be issur. Okay, so then it would cut the issur down, maybe even make it mutter, but it would cut the issur down.
Why have to be choshed that the bug from there went to there?
I don't know. That you'd have to understand the bugs, whether that's is that a real chash or is not a real chash. Did it go? You find it in the head. Should you be choshesh went from here to there? I guess you have to know more about the bugs there. Okay, but you maybe don't have to be choshesh at all. Maybe it's a drabanan. You don't have to be choshesh at all. Maybe, but this is only a possible heter because it depends on if you have to be choshesh. They went from head to head. I don't know if the bugs go from head to head, and that's a okay. But it's only issur deraisa if I know the bug is there. If I have a head that it occasionally has bugs in it, so midaraisa I'm allowed to eat it. We're going to get to that in Halacha Testament Hashem. Midrabanan I have to check for it. Midrabanan I have to check for it. It's only Drabanan. That makes my issur less and opens me up to Safek Drabanan the coolest kind of things like that. Okay. But a more lamaisa is if there would be. Now what I'm about to say I don't know if it exists lamaisa, but it would be a real heter, which is it exists lamaisa, which is if you grew for hydroponic vegetables, if you had on them leaf miners, okay? And that's what our sample is going to get today. It's like this. What are leaf miners? Leaf miners are like this. There are bugs that instead of laying their eggs, like you imagine, or laying their children, giving birth to their children, wherever they do, these bugs do is like this. They poke a hole in a leaf. Well, that's why they call leaf miners. They poke a hole in celery. That's what I have here for you. And they put the egg inside the leaf. Inside the leaf, I mean, is between the top and bottom layer of the leaf. So if the leaf is a millimeter thick, then it's between the top layer and the bottom layer. It's a half a millimeter in. They lay their egg in there, and so it's protected. It's sandwiched in between in the inside of the leaf. Okay, it's easier to understand than the celery because there's lots of. It seems like there's a lot of room, but even they do it in leaves. That's why they're called leaf miners. And it's sandwiched in the middle of the leaf, in spinach. And so what happens is then when the baby's born. The baby that's born doesn't leave. He tunnels through, I'm going to use the word horizontally through the leaf, staying between the layers of the leaf, okay, eating his way through, horizontally through the leaf, but never poking through to the outside. So, just like our friend from last week, the what are they called? The citrus scale. They have their whole life is in there. They have all they need to eat over here. This guy's got his whole life in front of him. He's got a whole leaf full of food to eat.
I remember he said that they pour out.
I'm getting this. And they spend a few weeks eating their way through the leaf, moving around, eating their way through the leaf, but never getting to the outside. They're protected from the outside. And then when they come to whatever stage of development, they then poke a hole in. They poke a hole in the side of the leaf. Off they go. They leave the leaf and do what they have to. No, they don't go back into another piece. They don't go into another celery.
They have children.
Eventually, they lay an egg someplace else in another piece, and the cycle goes on. Okay, so these bugs, I have samples. I'm going to show you. These bugs, when they're in the leaf, when they move around the leaf, and I'll show you how you can see where they are. They stay inside it. They're inside. If you open up the leaf, if you cut open this hole, you could find them. I've been shown them live. Okay, you could open the hole, and they're not small. You think, come on, how big could the thing be? They were, in a relative sense, huge. Okay, no question when they came out, the thing was nice and big. It was a full size, a nice sized bug coming out of this thing. Okay, live. I've seen them being taken out live.
Sorry.
The bad news is that you can't wash it. You can wash vegetables in different ways to try to get the bugs off. You can't wash these things off because they're inside. There's no way to get them out because they're stuck inside. You can't wash them off. Okay? On the other side, the only little good news is that if you think about it, let's say it stays in there for 3 weeks. The estimates I'm getting is like it's 2 to 3 weeks that it stays inside the leaf. Okay? So for the first 2-3 days, I'm making up numbers. For the first couple of days, you're gonna not notice that he's there. It's not big enough, and you don't see the trails that tell you that the leaf miner is there. I'm going to tell you about the trails in a second. You won't see that it's there. Well, after 4 weeks, let's say, you'll see all the trails of a leaf miner having been there. You'll see he ate his way through, but he won't be there anymore. He'll have poked out and gone. Okay, so the seeing the trails of the leaf miner tells you that a leaf miner was there. It doesn't tell you that the leaf miner is there. So the only issur is if you catch him when he's big enough that you could notice it, but before he leaves. Okay? So there's a certain window, maybe 2 weeks that are in there, that you would have noticed it, but before he left the thing. Lamaisa is the people I've spoken to, many of them tell me that yes, they happen on occasion, particularly in celery. That's what I have. I'm going to show you in 1 second, celery. But not so common that people are told to look for them, Lamaisa. I shouldn't say not the people. We would tell people to look for them, Lamaisa. Many other hashgachos would not tell them either to look for them. Some people will train their mashgichim to be alert for it. If they notice it, to throw it out. Okay? But not that we tell people as a rule to look for it.
That's what it comes to.
Right, that's correct. The time you know it.
From the time it's picked and it ends up at the market, how long is that?
I don't have a good answer to that question. It's not clear to me that it doesn't take long enough that the bug would have popped out of it.
Okay.
But I have to tell you, I have seen them live. People have picked up from retail stuff. Okay. I'm gonna pass that if you want for a second. What you're looking for is this is from our friend at Positive. What you're going to see here, what you're going to see on the celery is you're going to see these trails where they ate their way through, and they leave behind droppings. They leave behind droppings behind them. So you could.
Are they the black?
They leave little black droppings,
So you see here?
but they're in the piece of celery.
Right here.
Here, look down. See this squiggly lines over here? On this side? Yeah, on the darker side, on the outside. See that squiggly line? These ones don't have any droppings. So you see this line over here, the squiggly line? Someone put it in there. Okay? So now, you don't know when you look at it, you don't know when you're looking at it whether he's still there or if he's gone. Okay? He spends, because it was from the fridge.
You know, the line starts smaller in the beginning and gets fatter at the end?
Does it really? Okay, I guess that's the guy thing. I didn't notice that.
It gets bigger.
Okay, so when you're looking at him, you don't know if he's still in there, but I'm guessing there's about 2 weeks that he's in there that you would see the trail before he pops out on the other end. So if that's what happened, okay, I don't know enough about the growing to answer if it is a real Lamaisa. The people who I've asked tell me that it's not so common. One person I know who's
So common to what? And it's still there?
one so common to the point that, like I said, that it should be a miyad hamatzah that you have to look for it.
Look at this.
Okay, but the mashgichim, people who do this all the time, should just be aware of it, just in case they see it, that you catch their attention.
How would you see it?
Look at it.
If you would look carefully at it, would you notice these trails? The one you hold, you didn't have this black.
Look at this right here.
Usually there's black.
Yeah, but how do you know if the bug is still in there or not?
You don't know if it's in there.
You don't know if it's in there.
Unless you're a mamish expert, or you can hold at the end.
Either cut it off.
So if you would find it, they cut them out. People just cut out that part of it.
You cut out the parts.
You just
You
slice
grate
it.
it. Yeah. A lot of celery gets chopped up anyways.
What's that? So this thing grows in there, it grows on the earth.
So my point is, usually grows al oretz. My point, let me just finish up where we're heading.
Are they laying their eggs on that
live ones?
Hold on a second.
How do you know if he's still in there or not?
Only that poke's open. Or if you're some super excess, one person told me he knows. Okay, Greg, let me just finish what I'm saying, and we get look at our samples again. My the point. Can I eat this, right? Can I call you to attention?
I'm listening.
Okay. Okay. The point. My point here is to say it's like this: if this would grow in an Atzis Nakuv, if this would grow in a greenhouse, okay, hydroponically, the lettuce would grow in the ground and it would have leaf miners in it. That would be for sure mutter. Because it grew in an Atzis Nakuv. It wouldn't. If it would be a mir hamatzah, it grew in an Atzis Nakuv. We know it didn't come from a different plant because this is where it was born. It never left the leaf. So this would be an example of something that you would not have to be choishish for. You would be choishish for. If you saw it, you'd take it out. But to be choishish, you wouldn't have to be. Which is because we'd say it's a mir hamatzah. It's only mir hamatzah with our body to check for it. It's a machlokes a whether if it grows in Atzis Nakuv is issur or not. Because it grows on the ground. So it's Safek or something whichever you want to call it, it'll be mutter. But that means it's like this. It's think about it from the people who make the produce. Mm-hmm. They can wash it 100 times to get bugs out. There's nothing they could do to get leaf miners out. They can't get them out. So I'm saying is, Zol Zayin, wash it to get the regular bugs out of it, but the leaf miners, you don't have to get them out. Those leaf miners, if it's just a chash that they're in there, that's okay, because they never left.
You could not market that.
They go in leafy things. I have other examples here. Okay, let's stop here. We can keep looking at our pictures.